There we go.
Good.
Eileen, welcome. Good to see you too. All right, I'm going to go back to my screen sharing now and see if I can pick up where I was. There we are. I'm seeing that. Is that you seeing my picture there? And
Yes.
yeah, okay. So that's all the stuff you already know. So I don't really need to do this. Now, during this during my presentation, if you could mute yourself, it would be appreciated. Because and anchor it, I think I can do it for you. There you go. I have the power to mute somebody. And if I do, please don't be offended. It's not because I don't like you. It's because during Zooms, it's much better if just one person is making noise. Otherwise, it can be very disruptive. So Jean, I'm going to mute you. Anchor it, I muted you. Okay. All right. So we're all set now, I think. Okay, we'll go back to the beginning here. Next, questions and comments. If you know where the chat is, if you click on the chat, you can put questions and comments during my speech in there. But you can also ask them afterwards by putting your hand up. So when I'm finished, we will have a question period. It's just that some people are worried they might forget or whatever, or they're a little bit shy about speaking up later. And in that case, just put it in the chat and I will get to them later, okay? All right. I expect to speak for 30 to 40 minutes. After that, we'll have a Q&A. And like I just said, you can put a question in the chat at any time if you're too shy to put your hand up. And I will be notified if latecomers come in to the waiting room so I can let them in. So if you're worried about anybody who hasn't arrived yet, just know that. Okay, so what are these things called podcasts? Let me just put this away. No, I don't want to do that. All right, wait a minute. Oh, darn. There. You'll notice that in the pictures on this cover opening slide, there's a little arrow here, and this arrow is symbolic. Okay, this is the arrow that's often on things when you click on them to play a video or something. But in this case, I'm using it as a sign of an evolution from radio to podcasting, because really, podcasting is just radio in a different form. So if you're fond of radio, you would probably like podcasts. If you listen to radio, I happen to love it. I started listening in childhood when I didn't have any choice. My mother played the CBC all day, every day. I listened to Cooking School of the Air, all these shows that were on the CBC, The Friendly Giant, all these things that were just wonderful. Oh, The Friendly Giant was on CBC television, wasn't it? Shaylin, was that on the radio? Anyway, there were radio shows for children. The CBC was absolutely wonderful. But when you're listening to radio, there are certain frustrations that arise. Sometimes there are interruptions and you miss part of the show. Or you might miss an entire show because you just can't have your radio on at the time. So there are certain advantages that podcasts can offer. First of all, you can access them whenever you want. Just the shows you feel like listening to. They're available anytime. They're pausable. They're rewindable. So if you weren't listening or something, you can rewind and listen again. They're fast forwardable if you're bored and you don't want to listen to that part. And if you sign up and subscribe, they will actually let you know when a new episode is available. You don't have to go to it right away, but it just sort of will let you know. You can also use them wherever you are. They're playable on computers, smartphones, tablets, iPods, all these different things. You can stream a podcast on the website or download one episode at a time and then delete it. not taking up a lot of room in your phone or whatever. And thus you can play it with or without internet access too. So what if, like radio, all these advantages were offered for free? Podcasts are kind of like radio that way too. They're usually free. So the podcast changes the listener's experience significantly. You can stream online or download to listen offline. You can do something else while you're listening, like drive or cook or whatever. It's not like TV where you have to pay attention. So it's a really innovative thing that has changed things for people and made it easier to listen. Let me tell you a bit of the history. In 2004, a Google search on the word podcast gave 6,000 search results because they were just getting started then. In 2005, it was up to 60 million. And in 2021, it had reached more than 1.9 billion search results if you Googled the word podcast. This is paralleled by an ever-growing number of listeners and content created around the world. Anybody can make a podcast nowadays. It's really quite cheap to buy the equipment. It's not completely nothing, but it's not expensive, and a lot of people are doing it. So I got this quote from a paper by Rime, Pike, and Collins, and I will have a reference to it at the end of this because I'm an academic and I always have a references list. All right. This is from a website called Descript, and they have a complete history of podcasts. And they talk about how statistics show that 41% of Americans have listened to a podcast in the past month, and the podcast advertising market worldwide is expected to reach 3.46 billion in 2023. This was from November. Those numbers show that podcasting has become a new medium. I have to move this so I can really see this. It's a medium that a lot of brands are reaching out to, and they're using it to reach a diverse audience. The beauty of podcasts is that there's a show for just about every topic. This also comes from the Complete History podcast. Listeners can find podcasts for almost every niche, passion, or interest. Like there's a Denzel Washington is the greatest actor of all time, period, comedy podcast. Or there's one called Shazam, a podcast for female magicians. So there's really quite a lot there. Now, this slide shows a timeline that also comes from that academic article I referred to earlier. And it starts down at the bottom. Can you see my pointer down at the bottom? I hope so. Anyway, it's the year 2000 was when the earliest aspects of podcasting were available. And then the first iPod was invented, which was why they were called podcasts. Here, let me see that. And because they had been called audio blogging before that. And then by 2005, they were starting to have more podcasts, and the iPhone was invented right around 2005, 2006, I think it was. And they supposedly made subscribing easier. I know for a lot of people, the iPhone is a hopelessly complex gadget that they never really will master. But there are lots of us who over time have learned to use an iPhone and we're able to do it on there. Usually weekly shows like This American Life were popular in the early years. It became a podcast in 2006, and it had been a radio show that was very popular. And in 2014, the show called Serial was a huge hit. And it used a new format. It released the whole series all at once. And it was about 6 episodes. So it was like one of those TV series that's a limited series, and you could binge it. You know, but I think they released them 1 week at a time. But then once they were all released, you could binge the whole thing. And it was a huge hit because it's a crime podcast. And I have to say that crime podcasts are among the most popular of all. I have heard that they were the most popular. I'm just not sure if that's up to date. In 2015, Spotify and Google Play began to offer podcasts. The Apple iPhone started offering it back in 2006 when it was first invented, when they first put iTunes in. So they were way ahead. Apple was way ahead on this, but Spotify and Google Play began offering them in 2015. And The Daily, which is a very popular podcast produced by the New York Times, it originated in 2017. Today, the CBC and NPR release many of their regular shows as podcasts, so you have the option of listening to them whenever you want. Some podcasts actually have video as well, and they run on YouTube, but most podcasts are just audio. All right, so I want to play you a few samples, and you're going to get to hear some of them. The first one, we're actually going to go to the website of This American Life, which is one of the oldest podcasts, and one of the first I listened to, because I started listening to it as a radio show back in the 1990s because my kids loved it. Are you now seeing This American Life? Oh, I have to see you. Yeah? Okay, good. Okay, I have to hide you now. This is the This American Life website, and it really is terrific. You have to scroll down to read this stuff. There's a big picture at the top, but they will explain what their purpose is. They reached 3.5 million listeners each week. I'm not going to read you all this. It's just that it gives you a bit of the history of the show. The next tab up here are the tabs at the top. The tab called How to Listen is the one I really wanted you guys to see, because there's going to be some how-to stuff in this presentation, and this is the first part of it. So on this website, you can actually download the podcast app if you have an Apple device, or Spotify, which works on any computer or phone or whatever, Google Podcasts, all of these different things, Radio Public, Pandora. I will be recommending one of these, or three of these actually, further on, the ones that are most widely used. They also have their whole archive here, and if you look, there's a tab here that has the archive. They also have a recommended list, so there you can see all kinds of different shows that they've done, and you can also listen to them on the radio. So they talk about that. They are still on the radio. The thing about This American Life, it was revolutionary when it started. Its host, Ira Glass, was a guy who was in radio, but he wasn't happy with the way he sounded on the radio. And so he decided that he really wanted to do interviews that made things a narrative. He wanted to have a narrative form to what he was doing. And because most radio shows now actually try to do this, you wouldn't realize that before Ira Glass in the 1990s, most radio documentaries were kind of dry and dull. This narrative format, because it's a way communication scholars talk about how this is the way we think. Narrative is the way we remember things. It's the best way to remember things. Stories are inherently interesting to humans. And so it's an excellent way to communicate. And I think that's why This American Life has been in the top 10 podcast list almost since since they've been made, since there have been such lists. It is still one of the top 10 after all these years. Okay, let's go back to the slideshow. This is where it gets complicated. And I just have a few things going on here. Okay. The next one, we're going to actually listen to an excerpt. And I have that right here. Okay, Canadaland. When I was in Cleveland, are you now seeing Canadaland? Can you nod if you're seeing the Canada Land screen? Yeah, great. Dorothy, thank you for nodding. I know your neck is is not, it's not easy for you to do that. Okay. So this is a podcast I started listening to when I was living in Cleveland and was feeling homesick. And a fellow Canadian in Cleveland told me, you've really got to hear this show. It had only just started and it was about the media. So it fulfilled two things for me. It was about the media and it was also from home. So I was really happy about that. Let me just see now. Where am I? All right. I've got to press the button. So you're now going to hear a little bit of music, I hope. And then Jesse Brown, the host of Canada Land, and he's talking about Twitter. The reason this particular episode, which is episode number 958, is called An Elegy to Snark, is because it's about Twitter, and Twitter is kind of snarky.
Get your first month for free. October 1st, 2012, Jonathan Goldsbie tweets about me. Jesse Brown, giving examples of blandly factual statements. You're wearing a tie, my name is Jesse, and Margaret Wente is a plagiarist. I was curious what the first thing that Goldsbie ever tweeted about me was. It wasn't that. He actually was tweeting about stuff I wrote in 2009. It's incredible that there's this perfect record, a perfect record of words. You know, words just fly by every day, but this machine that can tell you the first time I ever mentioned you, the first time you ever mentioned me, what was said. And that one popped out because that appearance of mine on the television show The Agenda, where I told host Steve Paikin that as sure as he's wearing a tie and my name is Jesse, Margaret Wente is a plagiarist, that was sort of the moment where I found my conviction to start a media criticism project called Canada Land. I had no idea at the time that Goldsbie would become a part of it. I don't think I had met him. It was a relationship based on words. He had heard my words, he tweeted my words, I read his words. He was a master of the form at an early stage, tweeting from Toronto City Hall. I think he didn't even have a smartphone, which was part of the lore of Jonathan Goldsbie. Back when tweets were essentially text messages typed out on your numerical keypad, he was documenting the Rob Ford era. And all the other reporters at Toronto City Hall, I think, pitched in to buy him his first BlackBerry. Goldsbie's mastery of Twitter has been an asset here. Nobody keeps better files. Every dumb thing that every politician ever said lives on his hard drive on a discrete file folder that he can draw up whenever they contradict themselves or make an ass of themselves or turn out a hypocrite. It's not about Twitter. You know, Twitter people like to shit on. He tweeted. He didn't tweet. He said. This is just where people say things.
Okay. So enough of Jesse, but you get the idea. He's kind of snarky himself. I find him a lot of fun. And he does really good media criticism. That particular episode, he goes on, and the guy he's talking about, Jonathan Goldsbie, does the rest of the show and produces something about the decline of Twitter under Elon Musk and what's happened to Twitter, which I truly love. I love Twitter, or used to, and many journalists do. So this was, you know, really helpful to me to hear their analysis of Twitter, why it mattered, why did it matter so much to so many people, and what they felt about its decline and what the loss is. What are we losing? You know? Okay, so the next one is Serial. Serial, S-E-R-I-A-L, not the breakfast cereal. I'm going to play a little excerpt from Serial, which takes place in Cleveland, where I used to live. Just a minute or two, so you get the idea of what Serial's like. Remember, it's usually about crime. And this one is no exception.
The Justice
Oh, sorry.
Center in Cleveland, Ohio, takes up a whole city block downtown. It's a cluster of concrete towers built in the 1970s. I could hedge here, but I'm just going to say it. The buildings are hideous, but practical. The Justice Center houses in one location everything a justice system needs. The city and county courts, the county jail, prosecutors' offices, the sheriff's office, and headquarters for the Cleveland Police. Roughly speaking, the building functions like most hierarchies, vertically, in this case from the bowels up. The main court tower is 26 stories high, so the elevator really runs the place. If a person's arrested in Cleveland, they're coming into the Justice Center from the basement. Weary cops escort suspects from the underground parking garage. They get booked, go up a few floors to the jail. Once they get a court date, they're riding up to one of the courtroom floors. The lower floors are for lesser crimes, less hallowed proceedings, misdemeanors, housing court. And the higher floors, starting about halfway up the building, are for felonies. Detectives wearing lanyards often get off on the 9th floor, where the prosecutor's office is. The court stenographers, always courteous, drag their squat wheelie cases on and off the elevator. Maybe they chat for a few floors with the officers from the sheriff's department in search of a coffee and a muffin. Defense attorneys are riding up and down all morning, muttering to each other, can you believe? Griping about judges who have their own judge elevators, so they're not overhearing. The elevator mainstays, of course, are crime victims and their families, and defendants and their families. Sometimes those families are one and the same. When I'm feeling optimistic, I appreciate that an elevator car in a government building is one of the few places left in our country where different kinds of people are forced into proximity. I like to think that we can all stand so close to one another with our sensible heels and Timberland boots and American flag lapel pins and fake eyelashes and Axe cologne and orthopedic inserts and teardrop tattoos and to-go coffees. And when the elevator doors open up, spilling us out onto our floor, the fact that no one is bloodied or even in tears, it's a small, pleasing reminder that we're all in this together.
So that's a sample of Sarah Koenig, the host of Serial. And what I find about her is her writing, what she expresses in these podcasts. And she has a very listenable voice too. And it became hugely popular. Serial went right to the top of the charts as far as podcasts were concerned when it was first released in, I think it was 2014. That's right. Now, here's one that a lot more people are familiar with and might be something that people in this group have listened to. Just let me wait until the little arrow shows up and see if you recognize it. It's going to take a minute to sit there. So there's a little listen thing right here. You can listen to it right on the website. And this is helpful because if you just go to the New York Times website, you can actually listen to this for free. I have not signed in. It's offering me a subscription. I have one already. It doesn't know that.
From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily. Inside the Republican Party, a class war is playing out between the pro-Trump base, who's ready for the nomination fight to be over, and the anti-Trump donor class, who thinks it's just getting started. Today, my colleague, Asted Herndon, a political correspondent and host of The Run-Up, reports on that clash. It's Tuesday, January 30th.
He always does that too. So that's the Daily. And I wanted to play these excerpts for you because you will probably notice something about the sound of all of these podcasts. There's a picture of Michael Barbaro at work. You'll notice that each has a distinctive voice. and in the case of Sarah Koenig, her voice is not that distinctive, but she writes so beautifully and distinctively that it elevates her speaking voice to quite a high level, I think. Michael Barbaro, he has this pauses that he does. And you can recognize, once you've been listening to The Daily for a while, you would recognize his voice instantly because you know you've heard it before, you know who it is. And The Daily, when it first came out, also went right to the top of the charts. It's one of the most popular podcasts in the United States. And yeah, it's stayed there. It's in the top 10 still. The CBC, closer to home, has a lot of podcasts. First of all, like NPR in the United States, the CBC releases many shows as podcasts. Your favorite shows on CBC are probably available. We're going to go to the website and take a look. There are also CBC produced podcasts that aren't on the radio. And here's how to find them. There's a couple of different places. So you can go to either of these two links. I'm going to go to this one because I find I like the display better. Can you not, if you're seeing this CBC website now and not my slideshow? Is it showing up? Oh, nobody's nodding because everybody's got their video turned off. If you're one of the few
Yes,
people,
we can see it.
okay, thank you. Okay, great. So if you want to listen to As It Happens, this is there's live radio, there's on demand, and then there's podcasts, right? So I'm going to click on the podcast tab up here at the top, and these are things that are available as podcasts. And there's just a whole lot of them. You can scroll along and see them all. Just follow that link. And if you need my slides afterwards, just ask the Mira administrator, or you can ask me if you happen to know me and have my email. I'm going to put my email on the last slide too, which I have done that. Okay. My favorite, the one that I subscribe to, is called Writers and Company with Eleanor Wachtel. And she has a very distinctive voice. She has
languages before learning French and even Russian in school. He was raised by his mother and stepfather and a large extended family. When he was in his early 20s, he left for Paris to study law, and for 10 years he worked for a multinational corporation while also writing and publishing volumes of poetry.
Okay, I'm going to turn that off, but that's just a little sample of Eleanor Wachtel on Writers and Company. And her show, it's a regular show on the radio, but I almost never manage to get myself listening to the radio at the time when that show is on. So I like to have it as a podcast. It just arrives and I can always listen to it. She does interviews with and profiles of a great many excellent writers, and she's quite international in her approach too. Okay. Next slide. There are some fun podcasts. I tend to listen to newsy things because I taught journalism and I'm a media scholar and stuff. But this one I thought would be interesting to some people. It's called Harry Potter Sacred Text. So it goes through all kinds of Harry Potter stuff. The website, I wanted to show you that on the website, there are tabs at the top. So if you want to know about the show, you click on the About tab. If you want to find an episode that you might want to listen to, you click on the Episodes tab and you can listen to it. There's a play button and a download button for all the ones that are right here. And then if you want to look at one of these, it will help you find them on the site. So if you want to see everything they've done about book one, The Sorcerer's Stone, you would click on this. And then you would get people talking about that book, the very first Harry Potter book. And there's resources on here. This is just a marvelous thing. The websites for these podcasts are often quite good and quite helpful. Okay, so what we have done so far is the streaming process. We have gone to various websites to see what the streaming process is for podcasts. Streaming meaning you just play one episode and you do it online on your computer or your phone. If you have a browser on your phone, you can, which you do, you can find the website and stream an episode or two if you would like that. That's what, and these are the steps. So you go and you search for the podcast, say you go to Google and you put in the word Canadaland, and it will take you to the site. And then you can play episodes just like we did for some of the stuff we just looked up. So don't click subscribe right away. I recommend click view episodes or just episodes. There'll be a tab with a list of episodes and you can find them that way. You scroll down, look at the topics they've covered, make up your mind if anything interests you. And if they don't bother with it anymore. Or if you find there's an episode that looks interesting, just click on it and listen to it for a while. See if you like it. It should offer you an arrow and a line that means you can just click on it in your browser like we did with the Daily on the New York Times website. And you can listen to that one episode or as much as you want of that episode. Now, the other way to access podcasts is by subscribing. And that's a little more complicated, but it becomes much more convenient if once you get it set up. So here's a video that explains it quite well, in my humble opinion. I hope you're seeing, it's just.
So I bet you've been hearing this word recently. Podcast. A podcast is essentially a radio show, but instead of being played through a radio, you listen through your computer or mobile device. Podcasts are great for commutes, workouts, or just relaxing. There are tons of podcasts out there for any number of subjects, including our very own Stay Paid, which talks about the best tactics and strategies to turn anyone into a top producer. Today, I'll be showing you how to subscribe to a podcast. So there are 3 major platforms where you can listen to podcasts: iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. We'll start with iTunes. If you have an Apple phone or computer, you'll want to use this. First, open up iTunes. If you're on a phone or tablet, look for the Podcasts app. From here, you can either browse through categories or search for a specific podcast. Let's search for Stay Paid. And there it is. Let's click on it. From here, you can see all the episodes for Stay Paid. You're able to download and listen to individual episodes by tapping on the right, or subscribe so that you can get the latest episodes automatically downloaded to your computer or mobile device. And that's it. Once an episode is published, you'll be able to listen right away. Let's do the same thing for Google Play. If you have an Android phone or tablet, like a Samsung or HTC, you'll want to use this. First, open the Google Play Music app. Just like with iTunes, you're able to browse through categories of podcasts or search for something specific. Let's search for Stay Paid. Scroll down to the Podcast tab and select Stay Paid. Tap on Subscribe and choose if you'd like the latest 3 episodes to be automatically downloaded, and if you'd like to be notified when an episode is live. Lastly, there's Spotify. If you want to listen on your computer, you'll want to use this. You can also use Spotify on both Apple and Android devices. Search for Stay Paid. You can scroll down to play individual episodes or add Stay Paid to your library so you can keep up to date with the latest episodes. And that's how you subscribe to a podcast.
All right. So, this link that I've just shown you, will be in the slides. So if you find that you want, to go back to that, on YouTube, you can, just ask for the slides. And you can ask me personally, or you can ask the Mira administrator, by going through the website. And, you'll be able to get both the recording of this presentation and slides. If you have never downloaded an app before, and I know there's some people on this broadcast or Zoom who have not probably done that a lot, or maybe they're not good at it. On a phone or tablet, you will find that a lot of the time, the podcast app is preloaded. If you have an Apple phone or tablet, it'll be this purple one, with the rings. A lot of people use Spotify, which is down in the lower right corner here, the green one, or there's Google Play. And Google Play apps, you can also go to the website, and they make it pretty easy to download the apps. First of all, you have to be in the apps tab. So there's one that says apps, APPS here. Don't go in the games tab or the movies and TV or books tab, right, if you're looking for an app. If you want to look at those other things, that's fine. Then in the second row, notice that you have to choose whether you're on a tablet, a Chromebook, a phone, or in a car, you can even choose. And then you want to scroll down, and it gives you a bunch of different apps that you might want to download. And there's everything from Instagram to podcast apps. So Spotify, there's that green one that I mentioned. That's probably the one you want. But if you're in Google, you should be able to find podcasts on Google Play. So just look for podcasts there too. All right, let's go back to my previous screen. Now, if you're on a computer, open your browser, the browser is the thing called Chrome or Safari or Firefox, or I don't know what other names of browsers are, but on the computers I've used, those are the ones I use. Or you can go to iTunes and Apple and follow the instructions to download the app for podcasts, or use the podcasting feature inside iTunes or Google Play, just like the guy showed you in that little video that we watched. I think I know I'm at the end of the presentation. I'm just going to do a quick summary. Okay. I think I've probably confused some people because I've given you so much information. But I want you to know you can look at this stuff again if you're in, and if you need my help, you can call on me to help you set this up. No problem. So here's the summary of what we just talked about. The advantages of podcasts: when, where, and at the speed you want. They're searchable, fast forwardable, rewindable, etc. A history of podcasts, when they started, how they improved and changed over time. The best ones have a distinctive voice and style and music. We heard some samples. There is now an endless range. There are plenty of them that are just plain fun. And how to get them. We did go over the process of finding, listening, and subscribing. And because that part is challenging if you're not familiar with how to download an app, I hope you'll get the recording and listen to it again. Okay. Now, what's my next slide? Oh, yes. Now, go out and enjoy the wide world of podcasts. And here are my references, because I'm an academic. I've got them all listed here. If you want to know more about podcasts, you can click on any of these things or find them. And I should mention next week's talk and the idea of donating to Mira. which puts on this whole series. You can just, you can go to the website, the Mira website. If you just Google MERA or miraschoolhouse.org, you will find out how to do an e-transfer to Mira. But if you already know how to do an e-transfer, you can just make one to miraschoolhouse@gmail.com. And next week's talk is going to be by Linda Cruz, who is an expert on, is an expert on housing, co-housing. Excuse me, my computer just went forward. This is something I really want to know more about. And Linda is really the person to tell us about it. So I am going to stop sharing. Oh, first I need to ask if there are questions, and we will stop sharing. And I think Anchorit wanted to say thank you to me. So Anchorit, I'm going to unmute you. Oh, you have to do it yourself. I can only ask you to unmute. Are you able to see where the mute button is? For everybody else's edification, I can't unmute you. Wait a minute. And spotlight. I can only ask you to unmute. Oh dear, it should be over at the far left. Are you on a phone, Anchorit? Oh, that's different. Yeah. We can't hear you. I mute.
I think, Terry, I think you can unmute as the host. I think you can mute.
I was able to mute her, but I can only, as the host, I can only ask her to unmute. Looked at all the settings, and that's all I can do. Yeah, they should give us the power to do that. I am so sorry, Anchorit. I am not able to unmute you now. Wait a second. Let me click here. And just see. No. Okay, so that is a problem. Anchorit was the person who invited me to come and speak. Oh, wait a minute. You just did it. You just did it right there, Anchorit. Whatever you hit about 2 seconds ago, that was the unmute button. Yes.
Yes. Oh, well, I want to thank you so much for Kerry. I think that a lot of us are sort of uncertain about podcasts because they haven't been part of our life. And is there any connection between YouTubes and podcasts?
Yes.
All these exciting new things keep coming into our lives. And, I think a lot of us, it's all new stuff. But podcasts I found, because I listened to the CBC, I didn't realize such a wide open world to podcasts. And I would love to know why we get the word pod. I mean, why is it iPod? Why is it a podcast? I don't know. Do you have any ideas about why it's a pod?
It was a term that was invented by Apple when they introduced this thing called the iPod, but that's all I know.
It's not a secret word for something else. I will think of,
It's about the size of a pea pod.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
tiny little device that you could attach to your collar or whatever, and you could store a whole bunch of music on it. And it was quite a breakthrough when they first came out with it.
Right. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun to hear, and I'm sure you've inspired us all. You've certainly inspired me. I'm going to go searching around, but I really like the idea of the choice and being able to the world is so open, and now you've pulled back the curtain, Kerry.
Oh, good. Thank you.
We'll all go looking inside. Thank you so much. And it's been really interesting.
Thank you, Anchorit.
Really fun.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do, Carrie.
Yes, Dorothy.
Oh, I'm Dorothy. I have a question. When we're asked to subscribe, does that mean we're paying for something? And when do we pay for podcasts? I don't know anything about the financial aspect of it.
Most podcasts are free, but some of them do ask you to pay. And if you click on the subscribe button, it will tell you. You will not be automatically charged or anything because you would have to enter your
Correct. Or you're
information.
clicking on the end of things.
Yeah.
I have never really even tried to listen to a podcast, so I really appreciate what you've said tonight. Although it's taken me a bit of time to really assimilate what you've said.
Yeah, I imagine it would. I really packed a lot into this, and I'm really glad you stayed through it, Dorothy.
No, like the more I listen, the more I'll be calling you, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and I'm going to be coming and visiting you, so I will help you get set up with something.
Oh, good, because I've got all the gadgets, but I had never realized, and I finally paid for an Apple subscription and music, and now I'm even more confused. I don't know what I'm paying for and what I'm not paying for. Anyway, they tell me I've got so many gadgets that are related to Apple that I should be paying less money per month. But
yeah,
how one does that, I don't know either. So it's a whole new world, and it's been fascinating to, especially when I've had to be so much at home this last couple of years. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Carrie,
Yeah, Jean. And then
yes.
Victor or Shirley. Victor and Shirley had a question too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
Okay, because the previous person asked the exact same question. So.
Oh, really? Okay. So Dorothy asked your question already, Shirley.
Oh.
Okay. So Jean, you speak up and.
Yes, so Jim just Googled and I think have at least Google's answer to Ankrit's question about why the name iPod. And what comes up is the name came from a freelance copywriter who, after seeing the prototype, thought of the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey and the phrase, "Open the pod bay door." Ha. There you go.
Right. Thank you.
Let it be known.
Margaret.
Yes, my question is, do any of these podcast apps provide closed captioning? I know that goes against the whole reason for listening to a podcast, so you can cook while you cook or drive or whatever while you're listening. But some of us actually have to read while we're listening because of hearing difficulties. So I wondered if any of them offered that.
I haven't heard of that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There are so many podcasts. It would be something to ask what we call Mother Google in our house. Google might be able to answer to that.
I will do that.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting on this Zoom call because Zoom provides the closed captioning.
Right.
Every podcast you've played has provided the words because I'm on Zoom. So if I'll ask Mother Google, and if I don't find it, I'll see if I can have a Zoom meeting with myself.
Yeah. I know my students, my student journalists would sometimes have an online app that would transcribe things like interviews that they had done. And I wonder, and this would be an audio format, and I can't remember what it was called, but you may know about it, Margaret, if you've had to use it.
Yeah, I have seen, I don't know if it's a podcast, but I have seen audio files that provide a transcription as well of what's being said. Yeah.
But a place where you can put in the audio and get the transcription, get it turned into text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now I can't remember what it's called. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I'll ask Google.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Margaret. That's a really good question because
it's a really good question. If you find out the answer, please let me know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you do find me, because I also have a hearing disability and need captioning. So if you do find the answer, I'd appreciate if you shared it with Carrie.
Okay, I'll share it with Carrie if I find the answer, and because Carrie said her email would be in this, or
Yeah, did it
Go.
come up on the, I'm gonna write it in here because I think I put it in there, but I must have whizzed by it. Okay, let me just. Meeting group chat to everybody. There. That's my email address. It's in the chat now. And I think it's in the slides somewhere. So, and I will make sure before I share the slides that it is, that I didn't cut it out for some reason or something like that. I did some things. But are you seeing it, Margaret? Are you able to see
I'm
the?
seeing it. I am copying it. I'm going to paste it somewhere.
That's always the problem, is figuring out where to paste it for me.
I
Anyway.
shall paste it.
Any other questions?
There we go. Thank you.
Oh, I am still recording, but I can turn it off.